Hello everyone, I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper. Today I'm coming to you from Custer, South Dakota. We're camping here with my daughter and her family, and if you haven't been to Custer, South Dakota, there's so much to do. Right down the road is Mount Rushmore, the Crazy Horse Memorial, Wind Cave National Park, Jewel Cave Monument, and of course my very favorite state park in the country, Custer State Park. Any of these parks are worth a visit. They are fabulous. There's tons of animals, beautiful rock formations in the Black Hills. You will love it. But right now we're taking a break from our adventures and we are going to play with the Botanical Layers stamp set. This is in the annual catalog, and we're going to make this center step fold card. It has a couple of little intricate folds and creases and cuts, but once you've made a couple, they're super easy to make. So I'm going to walk you through that and show you a great variation on it. So I'm going to take a moment to turn the camera down and we'll get started. Okay, before we get started, I wanted to show you how well Stampin' Up! Coordinates all of their products. Today we're going to be using this beautiful paper from the Inked Botanicals Designer Series paper pack. This is 6x6 paper. We're using this pattern today. As you know, all of the Stampin' Up's papers are double-sided, but look how pretty this goes. We have the Calypso Coral, the Crushed Curry, and the Pool Party right in this paper. We also have the ink pads, we have the paper, there's alcohol-based markers, there's so many products, there's embellishments, everything can be color coordinated no matter what you want to work with. So this is one of my favorite things about Stampin' Up, and it's why I've used the products for over 25 years. So this is the color scheme that we're going to use to make our card. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be using the Botanical Layers cling set. I love this. You can make it look like underwater plants. You can make it look like house plants. You can put them in little pots. There's so many things you can do with this set, but it's also a very simple set. So if you don't want to put together a really intricate card, this is a great way to create something really pretty. And these are really easy to fussy cut. That doesn't come with dies, but it's super simple to cut with your scissors. So let's get started. First, we're going to get out our paper cutter and get some of our cutting done. The base of our card is going to be with the Pool Party. We're going to cut our base at 4 1/4 by 11. Of course, the sheet is 11 inches long, so we're just going to cut it at 4 1/4. And you could make 2 cards with this because we basically just cut this paper in half. So then the next thing you're going to do is we're going to want to create these pieces here that are cut apart. So as you can see, we have 2 cuts here and then we have some folds. So we're going to work on these cuts next. And I made this card ahead of time to kind of give you a visual of what we're doing. So to make the cut, we're going to keep the paper up here on the 4 1/4 side, and we're going to put it over here. If you look, the right side of the cutting blade goes up to 1.5 inches. So I use this 1 inch mark a lot because I can hold the paper with my left hand. And then there's, of course, the measurements on this side. So we're going to put this paper on this 1 inch mark right here. Now, the great thing about the Stampin' Up! Trimmer is that the arm of the trimmer, it's probably not something you can see on camera, but there's a ruler here too. So this ruler comes in handy for folds like this, where you have a lot of cuts that are inside the paper and not just from the edge. So we're going to take our cutting blade and we're going to put it at the 1 inch mark, and there's a line that goes across this cutting blade, so you can match that line up with the 1 inch mark. Whoops, make sure your paper stays in place. And once you get it on that 1 inch mark or very close to it, go ahead and push it down, and then we're going to score it to the 6.5 inch line. We're going to cut it, not score it. We're going to cut it to the 6.5 inch line. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to stop my cutter line right at 6.5 inches. Okay, so we have this slit. So now we're going to put the other side of the paper at the 1 inch line, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start at the 1 inch mark, as close as we can get to that. If you go over a little, it's okay. Nobody's going to notice. So we're going to cut down to the 6.5 inch line. Okay? So now we have our 2 slits. So now the next thing we're going to do is on the end of the card, the top of the card where we have the slit close to the edge, it's 1 inch down. We're going to go ahead and turn this, and we're going to do a score line. So take your scoring blade, you're going to put your paper at this 1 inch line, and we're going to score at 1 inch all the way to the cut, just on the outer edges. So we're going to go 1 inch right here, just to that cut line, and as you can see, we have it right there. And then we're going to lift this up and move it to the next line, and I'm just matching it up with my cut line. And again, it's okay if it goes a little bit outside, and then you're going to score that. Okay, so you've got 2 score lines, one here and one here. So once you have that score line, I'm going to turn it over, turn it around, because I want to go to my 2 inch line, and I'm going to do the exact same thing at the 2 inch line. I'm going to score it all the way to that cut, and then I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to score it again right here. Okay, so now once you've got that one done, you're going to go to 5.5 inches. Okay, and the 5.5 inch line is going to be scored in the middle piece right here. That's going to give our card that dimension that pops up above the rest of the card base. So we're going to go ahead and score it from line to line, just in the middle. Okay? And then the last thing we're going to do is pull our arm out, because this cutter does have an extendable arm that brings you all the way out to 17 inches. And we're going to go to the 6.5 mark, and we're going to do one more score at the very top of where we cut our slits. So that one, and then we're going to go up here, and we're going to slit there. So if you look, these were our slit marks. So we have a score line here and here. We have a score line here. We have a score line here and here, and we have a score line here and here. That's it. All right? So when you fold this, you're going to do a mountain fold and a valley fold, like that. And then this is going to crease down, and if your measurements are off, it's okay. Sometimes mine are. This is going to be folded in half, and so then this is going to stick up. So there's our card. So once you do all the scores, it makes a lot more sense. And then you want to get your bone folder out, and this is an opportunity to make sure if your scoring or cutting is just a little off, this bone folder will fix that. So that's done. That's our card base. I need to change my blade. As you can see, if you start getting these little fuzzies when you cut your paper, it means your blade is starting to get dull, and it's a good time to change it, and you can order new blades for your cutter. And I'm at that point. So we're going to set this aside, and now we're going to cut our pieces for the middle. So we have our base. So now we're going to work on these 2 sides, and when I put them in my blog directions, you'll see they'll be called sides, bottom, inside, center, so you can kind of know where your cuts are coming from. So we are going to make 2 layers on each panel. So we're going to do cardstock at 7/8 inch by 4 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 4 1/4. This is a great use if you have some scraps. I've actually used most of my scraps up, but if you have a lot of scraps, this is a great way to use your scraps. Now we're going to make this 7/8, and I'm going to go over here and do the 7/8 because I like to be able to hold my hand over here on the cutter. You know, I'm still having that problem with my cutting blade. I just need to replace my cutting blades. When you live in an RV, things get banged around. Sometimes they get dumped out on rough roads, and things get a little crazy. Okay, those are our 2 pieces for the back. And then remember this designer series paper? We're going to use this. So the designer series paper is going to be 3/4 inches by 4 1/8. Now this is directional, so I'm going to cut my 4 1/8 right here. because I want to make sure my tall pieces are going to be facing the right way. And now I'm going to cut this at 3/4 inch. So when you put these together, they layer really nicely. And then I'm going to do one more at 3/4 of an inch. So those are our 2 layers for the sides. I'm going to set those aside. And then the next part we're going to cut is the center right here. So I've decided to do the Calypso coral for the center, which is going to be 2 1/8 by 4 3/8. So I'm going to cut my, let's see, that won't work. So we're going to cut it this way, 4 3/8. And then 2 1/8. So that's my centerpiece. And then I'm going to get a piece of Whisper White. I think I have some scraps. See if one of these will work. And that is going to be 2 1/8. No, 2 by 4 1/4. Excuse me. Let's see how long this is. So that is not going to work. I always like to check out my scraps because why waste paper, right? Okay, that actually looks like 4 1/4. Let's be sure. All right, cut this little piece off. And then, so it's going to be 4 1/4 by 2 inches. All right, so those are going to be layered here, and we're going to do some stamping on that. And then the next part we're going to do is the bottom piece right here. The bottom is going to be 7/8 by 4 1/8 with the Calypso coral. Let's see if we have a long enough piece. We do. By 7/8. Okay, and then we need a piece of white because we're going to do some stamping again, and that's going to be 3/4 by 4 inches. That is 4 inches, so we'll just cut 3/4. So that's going to be our piece for the bottom. And then the final piece that we need is simply the inside. So that inside, again, will be Whisper White. And it's going to be 4 by 4 1/4. I do have some cardstock here, so let's do... I love using my scraps. By 4 1/4. All right, so that is all of our cutting. We're going to set that aside, and now we're going to do some stamping. All right. Here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is work on the bottom. I'm going to use the stamp that says, "You mean the world to me." And I'm going to grab my Calypso coral because, again, we want to be pulling in all of our stamp colors to match our paper so everything looks put together. So I'm going to ink this up. This is a pretty new stamp, so I have to be careful about them being a little too juicy. All right, I'm going to try not to put my head in your camera. Okay, look at, I stamped too hard. Paper has 2 sides, so we're going to flip it over and do it again. It's really difficult for me for some reason to do this without putting my head in the camera, so there we go, much better. I like to stamp off my stamps before I clean them. It keeps your cleaning pad a little bit less muddy. So we're going to put this away. I like to close my stamps as I stamp because I am inevitably going to put the wrong stamp on the wrong color, and that makes a mess, or I stick my arm in it. I've done that a lot too. So now I'm going to take this floral stamp and I'm just going to ink with the crushed curry, and I'm just going to add some leaves down here in the corner lightly. I'm not pushing real hard. I don't need them to be big and bold. I just want them to be on there. So that just kind of gives it a little bit more color. All right, so that's done. Clean off my stamp. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. And now this is going to be the centerpiece that goes on the center of the card. And what I like to do with this is kind of create some layers. So you can do it however you want. I'm going to start with Pool Party. I'm going to, again, use this. I'm going to stamp it down. This is a pretty juicy stamp as well. And I like to check on these thicker stamps. Sometimes I'll just stamp it this way. This one's not too terribly big, but I want to make sure I have good coverage. And then I'm just going to stamp it. And I'm putting this to the bottom of the paper. Give it a nice little push. I try not to rock it, so if I have any ink on the edge, it won't show up on my piece of paper. Clean that off. And I want to keep using the colors that's in my designer series paper. So I'm going to now, I think, grab this crushed curry again. And I have this stamp again. This is the one that I used on the front piece. But I'm going to stamp the whole image now. And I'm just going to kind of build a flower arrangement. So maybe I'll put this here. And maybe I'll do here. It's okay if you go off the paper. All right, clean that off. And then I'm going to grab the Calypso Coral. And I really like this one. It's sort of flowery. My ink block is a little bit dirty. I'm going to stamp this one upside down because this is such a big block. I don't want to get ink on my block. I'm just going to ink that down and figure out where I want to put this. Let's see, I'm going to put it like this. There's really no wrong way to do it. So it just kind of looks layered. And then I'm going to stamp off, clean that. And then I think I'm going to add Thinking of You on here. We'll have our messages all on the front of the card. And again, I'm going to go back to this Pool Party. Stamp that here. And just put this up here. Hopefully straight. It's hard to do this when I don't put my head in the camera. Okay. So that piece is done. And then when you layer it, all the colors are being pulled together. So look how nice that looks. So we're going to set that aside. And then the final piece we have is our inside piece right here. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to build some flowers. So I think I'm going to use this. And I got to make sure, where's my card base? You want to make sure that you know which way to put your paper. This one goes this. Actually, I cut this too big. Glad I checked. This was supposed to be 4 by 4 1/4. 4 1/4 by. Looks like I did 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Okay. Glad I checked. Always good to double check before you do all that stamping work. Okay, so our piece of paper is going to face this way. So you can do so many different things. I think I'm going to create a cluster in the corner. So I'm going to put that there. I mean, that looks beautiful just like that. But I think I will go one step further and add some Calypso coral. Remember we had this really flowery one, but this time I'm not going to use the whole piece. I'm just going to put a little bit maybe right here, like that. And then I'm going to finish it off with a little crushed curry. And we'll pull this one in. Where should I put it? I'll put it right here. Okay, so we have our little cluster, and it's going to pull in all the colors of our paper once more on the inside, and you have tons of room to write your messages. I like to have a lot of room to write. Okay, stamping is done. So now all we have to do is put it together. So let's set aside our scrap paper. I'm going to pull out my craft sheet and start adhering everything. So we're going to just use some Stamp and Seal. I'm going to work from the back of the card to the front of the card. So this is going to go on the front, or on the back panel. All right, now we're going to go ahead and do the sides. So I'm going to get these two pieces out and lay those out. And just going to do some adhesive down the middle. And remember, you want to make sure if you have directional paper you're using, make sure the direction is correct. Once you do your stamping, this card really comes together fast. Okay, those are done. And I'm going to use Stamp and Seal Plus to put these pieces on, just in case it gets played with a lot. I want to make sure that this stays on extra strong. This Stamp and Seal Plus is stronger than the Stamp and Seal, so it's really good for fun folds where people might be moving the card around a lot. So I usually tuck the bottom under and then just kind of line everything up. Okay. All right. Now we're going to work on the center. And then the last piece goes on the bottom. Just about empty. That always works out. Okay. There we go. And the last piece goes on. Make sure it's not upside down. I've done that before. Yeah, this piece needs a little haircut. Always keep yourself a pair of scissors that you can use on sticky things. You don't want to use your good paper trimmers for sticky pieces because it'll gum up your good sharp scissors. So I keep a pair just for this. Apparently I cut it a little long. I don't know why. And there we go. So there's our card. It really only took a few minutes. It looked a little daunting, but once you've made a couple of these, super easy. And you can put one together using any kind of look. So let me show you the other sample that we made. So I also made this one, same exact stamp set, except I used the paper that goes with the Botanical Layers set. And I love it because it uses the brand new in color colors. So the copper clay, the moody mauve is in there. There's pretty peacock in here. It's just super pretty. I did it pretty much the same. I used some different flowers from the set in here. These are sort of little fluffy round flowers that probably blew off one of these other flowers. So I put that on there. And then this one, this layer, I stamped on a separate piece of scrap paper in pretty peacock, and then I fussy cut around it and added some dimensionals so it kind of gave it a little bit of a raised effect. And then just simply added one plant inside and added my thinking of you here. And this plant looks really cool as an underwater plant too, so if you wanted to make more of an ocean theme card, this looks like seaweed when you do it in a green color. So all of these flowers would really look cool as an underwater card too. So here's our two samples. So this one's darker and uses more of the earth tones, and then this one is lighter and uses more of the pastels. Let me know which one you like the best, and I will of course put all the cutting and scoring directions in my blog. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and try out these card designs. I think you'll love them and you will wow anybody who gets them. So thank you for watching today. Again, I'm Jill the Wandering Stamper, and I hope to see you next time. Have a great day.